Hi, I'm Johnny, welcome to the gun shop, and today we're going to be having an in-depth look at this, the mighty Browning 525. We'll start, as we do, with the case. When you buy a 525, not always, they do limited runs by the way without cases, so usually when they do like a entry-level gun, and they haven't done this for a few years actually, they'll knock £100 off and not give you a case. And they give you a cardboard box a little bit like a Marugu. The majority of their cases look like this, a black ABS case with Browning on the front and your buck mark. You open the case and you're provided with eggshell foam, some nicely moulded cutouts, a gun lock, big fat choke key, and something I never really understood, a cardboard box with some chokes in it. What's nicer in the nicer models certainly is that cardboard box, although it's still a cardboard box, will have more chokes, it'll have trigger blades, trigger tools, that sort of thing. But they do at least provide you with some spare bits, which is rather delightful. No combination locks on this, instead they've just got padlock loops on here. It's a bit archaic, but the case does the job, and most people don't even use them anyway. Now, on to the important bit, the gun. Okay, the mighty Browning 525. We'll talk about some real basics. First, what it is available in. It is available in just about every specification under the sun, from 26 inch to 32 inch. From 12 bore down to 410. It is available from this, a machine built, very unexciting thing, into its slightly higher classes, and they might give it a different name, but it's still a 525 underneath, maybe finished in Belgium. The only thing different to this really is when you go into your B25 range, the fully hand built ones. This gun is built in Japan by Marugu for Browning, and as I said, they do some models that are actually finished by hand in Belgium, but we'll not get into those today. What we're really looking at is the mechanics of this and what makes it so great. So, without further ado, come in close and let's get into it. Okay, so here she is. This is a Browning Sporting Grade 1, and we're just going to pull it apart. To take a Browning apart, very simply, it's a little 4-end latch under there. You pull that down, the 4-end wood will pull straight off, and with the Browning you can pull it all the way down. There's nothing in the way in particular. The thing you have to make sure is this tongue at the bottom disengages. And the action and barrels come apart thus. Top lever off, barrels open, and she will just fall apart. Simple as that. I suppose what we should look for here now is just a quick putting it back together part. What we're looking for is this hook here to go over this cross pin here. And what we're going to do is we're going to just make sure your ejectors are out ever so slightly. Come in from a high angle, down like that, and she'll lock in perfectly. It's as simple as that. There's not much location wise or locating lug wise on a Browning, so they do go together very smoothly. The 4-end then comes in, and you see you've got this little sliding bar here. What you're looking for is for this little tongue here to locate with that sliding bar. Push the sliding bar in. That connects your 4-end to your big cocking arm inside the gun. We'll look at that in just a sec. And job done. Right, so again, to pull her apart, nice and simple. Always put your 4-end wood down like that. Obviously, if you put it on your side, it has a tendency to roll off stuff, so always put it down that way. Never remind people enough. Top lever across and barrels out. So, let's start with the stock, shall we? The stock is available in about 1,000 different grades. It's available in about 6 different grades, and it is available with adjustable comb and knot. Nowadays they no longer put this beautiful hand-fitted heel pad on the back, and instead have opted for more of a Beretta feel in having an interchangeable pad system. I really like these, and I thought it was a real nice perk to have a hand-fitted pad on the back, but it's understandable that nowadays people want customization or customizability, and they don't want to hack their guns around quite as much as people used to. People don't want to commit to gun fix, people don't want to commit to guns, so they've put a multiple pad system on there. The multiple pad system requires one of these, a Phillips screwdriver to take apart, but this little one just requires a flathead screwdriver. We'll take it apart in just a sec once we've moved on. Moving on, there is autosave and manual safe options, and actually putting in, certainly in later models, a autosave or removing an autosave is fairly simple. Triggers, there is adjustable triggers, and all the adjustable triggers have about 6 different blade options, what you can put on there. Thin, fat, right-handed, left-handed, all that sort of thing, and they're very simple to do. Let's pull this apart and have a little look. Once you take this pad off in either gun, you're left with a little stock bolt hole, and that stock bolt can be removed by a large flathead, like this, or I believe, depending on model, they did put some hex-headed nuts in there so you can take it out with a wrench. But for the most part, it's one of these. Best bet to do is to lift it up to the light, catch some light in there, see where your cross is. I actually have to move this quickly. Drop it in on top, put it in your hole. And undo it, there you go. You know, there's got to be a lot of benefits to having, like most other people do now, a long Allen key that works, but this is nice, it's old school, and that kind of makes me happy, to be honest. Right, the action comes out. Thus, so like that, there's your stock bolt there, and that's what holds your gun on. This can also limit how much cast you get put on the gun. You can get slightly bent ones of these, you can open up your stock bolt hole, there is options there if you need extra cast. But generally speaking, on something like this, if you need an extra cast over what you can bend it around the stock bolt, is you're going to need an adjustable comb or face cast cut into the gun or something like that. Right, just to get the action out, just give it a little tap, because they are put in there very well. And that will then just pop out. There we go. And here we are. This is the Browning superposed action as it was more or less 100 years ago. Not a lot has changed. So let's give you a quick explanation really of how it works. So what happens is there is your safety. So your safety is disengaging this whole back block here, which is all very good. When you put your safety forward, as you move your selector moves this block left and right. As you push your safety forward, it moves the first part of this block onto, let's put it onto your side, onto the sear. Part of the reason people might complain about Browning triggers is that by the time you pull this trigger is connected to this block connects to these top sears, and there's a long connection there, and as such you don't end up with the short sharp sears that you get in the trigger plate action like the Beretta. However, it's not a bad trigger system, and actually being a little bit bigger can be, not that Berettas are unreliable, but can be more reliable than certain bottom loaded sears. Certainly easier to regulate and easier to change. So you push this forward to pull the trigger. As you can see, the hammer falls forward. Hammer falls forward on firing pins. Browning firing pins are very good, but they are prone to pitting. Aftermarket ones that are made up can be very good, and you can actually make them slightly better than the factory, but for the cost of factory firing pins, just put factory firing pins in there. Alright, so you fired that shot, the recoil shakes this block back. As you can see, that sear drops out of the way, and now it moves on to, it will fall forward, and this sear falls onto the back part of your inertia block, and then you pull the trigger. We flip around, we pull the trigger, and your second hammer falls. And that's as simple as a Browning gets in terms of the firing cycle. Obviously they've updated this in the 75 to have a mechanical trigger, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with the way this works. They have coil springs that have little guide rods in. They don't taper the back of their guide rods at all, and they don't give you any locator channels, but actually that doesn't make very much difference on a day-to-day usage basis. It's more of just a putting together engineering thing. What then happens, which is quite exciting, is as you open the gun, the part we said that's connected to this tongue lifts up. Let me just lifts up, and there's a whole piece in here that will rock and push the hammers back. As the hammers push back, I'm going to attach it all together for you now actually. As the hammers push back, they push these rods forward, and as these rods push forward, that they engage with your ejector springs, your ejector sears, and that is what makes the gun eject. The end. And as it cocks back, these hammers are pushed back, and you do have on these, which is quite nice, you have a little interceptor sear on the top there actually. So, you know, if you ever do not cock it fully, it's not going to drop on itself, it will just catch on that first sear, a little bit like this. So we can just cock it ever so, like that, and then the gun will not fire, as you can see. I'm just going to cock that. The top lever on this gun is connected to the spindle. It is a one-piece unit, the spindle being the part that goes all the way down and connects with the bottom bite. To make a Browning top lever go over, push top lever across, this tongue will drop down, and as the tongue drops down, the top lever will go across, revealing the locking part of this gun. This is this large single-piece locking bottom bite. It's fairly good, it's fairly handy, and we like that a lot. It's a very simple thing. Positives, huge locking surface area, and being at the bottom, it's a lot easier to regulate perhaps than at the top. That just locks straight into this barrel lock here, and actually it gives you a nice thing. You can actually have a look at these, and you can see all the points of contact, and you can get those polished out if you really want it to operate a bit more smoothly. Negatives. Bottom locking bites can have a tendency when they get hot, your top lever will get really stiff to crack across, or when they're new, they do take a little bit of wearing in. However, if you really wanted, you could pay a gunsmith to have the two mated together perfectly. Or you could just go out and shoot it a bit, and that would operate pretty much the same. So, anything else that's particularly good about this action? It's all very good. You know, there's not a lot else to say about it than that. The beauty in it is in its simplicity. It's such an easy action to work with and on. There's nothing about it that is overcomplicated, which is good. You've got your little safety spring on the top there. Even that's very simple. Your top lever spring is just bound around the side by a little screw. Very, very simple. You know, it's not a complicated design, although it's a very clever design, and you probably couldn't come up with it if nobody told you about it. It's very simple, and that's why it's been around for 100 years. Anyway, without further ado, I will put the stock back on. Actually, tell a lie, before I put the stock back on, I'll show you what I mean about the cocking piece and the cocking arm. Is when we put it together, only because it's a bit smaller to look at like this, that whole cocking arm, you see that tongue goes together like that. When you open it up, you see it's this part here, and when you open this, this pushes this arm up. This is connected to your cocking arm, so you can almost watch this. And if this isn't sitting down flush, there's probably something wrong. Just worth a mention, certainly. Again, not that you really have too many problems with these guns. Right, when putting them back together, it's real simple. What you're looking to do, you have these two big channels, two big cutout channels in the headwork. They're designed for your two big cutouts in the side, aka your springs. They just drop in, just like that. Squish your head so your two heads are inside, so it actually joins up perfectly. And quite simply drop your stock bolt back in. Give it a little shake, get back in the light. Do her up. Oh, and the pad goes back on, equally as simple. A quick interlude now it's back on, this is hand checkered. Just about every 525 is hand checkered, and that is just a lovely feature. You get a much nicer feel out of a hand checkered gun than you do a laser checkered gun, even though practically it makes no difference. It's just nice. And in fact, the Brownings have always been all about hand finishing, whether they're made in Belgium or Japan. There's a lot more handwork goes into a Browning than most other brands. Although you won't see it and it's not shiny and bling, the quality is there and the regulation is there and the hand finishing is there. Hence you don't get an awful lot of problems with out of the box Brownings, unlike other brands actually. Browning is probably one of the best, Browning / Maruku I should point out here, is probably one of the best out the box reliability brands out there. In the 525 at least. Or 525 based actions, Browning superposed based actions. Right, let's move on to the fore end. The fore end comes apart very simply. And this isn't like a how-to as such, but we're just going to show you what's inside because it's a lot easier than just working round. Is with 3 Phillips. Earlier models will come with flat heads, and they do have a very separate hole each, so try and line them up perfectly, or at least put them in the right place so you can put them in the right hole afterwards. Not that it's that hard to figure it out. Again, Browning offer a vast array, a bit like their stock, a vast array of fore-ends, both wood grades and styles. I say vast, probably I can think of 4 off the top of my head of styles, but then you've got different wood grades in each. The main popular ones are this, the Schnabel, you obviously have the beaver tail, the big fat one, and you have the American with the rounded front, and I think they do a semi-beaver tail as well. Right, so if we pull this out, quite simply, this reveals what you've got under there. Let me attach this quickly. Oh yeah. So, only worth saying that these are PH screws, not PZ screws, just in case you had in mind to take one apart. Right, so this here is your fore-end iron. This is your exciting part. What you have is you have your ejector kickers here. They're very, very meaty. I've never seen them cracked in 525s, but earlier models I have, so again, maybe just worth getting those checked out. It's maybe not the smallest of ejector systems, but I'm really a big fan of having external ejector springs because it gives you this barrel with nice floppy ejectors on. It makes them easier to clean, easier to look after, and they're just a bit more polite than being stuck out all the time. Also means there's no moving parts in and around your barrels apart from your ejectors. They are a 2-part ejector system, and we did a little video that's worth checking out on how to remove them, so we're not going to go into that today, but worth always popping them out and giving them a little clean. On earlier models, again, they did have issues with them cracking. However, they've really solved that by using, when I say earlier models, we're talking 30 or 40 years ago now, and A1s, 70 years ago. We're talking about having little cracks around the head, but also it's never worth not having a look if you're buying one of these second hand from an unknown source. Just checking around all your ejector work to make sure there's no tiny cracks or anything like that. However, if they are dirty, it's kind of hard to see micro cracks in there. Anyway, let's sling this together. Just undo it slightly. It's not something we do on a regular basis, I'm afraid. Alright, there we are. So, we have the fore-end iron put in place. Now what we're going to watch is, as we fire the gun, we're going to go with the bottom barrel so you can see. As you see, as we said, when we open the gun, the ejector rod pushes forward and pushes this little sear down. So as you'll see, it pushes, and it's actually pushing it off of that ejector kicker there. Like that. Simple as that. It's a large engagement and it's a lot of timing, and although that could be construed as a lot of things to go wrong, they don't, mostly because it's a Browning, and that's good. So, things that might need replacing periodically, or at least semi-periodically, is your fore-end catch spring there. I've only seen one go actually, so I say periodically it's unlikely, but again, I think it's only a couple of quid, so maybe worth changing every 30 years. And your ejector springs here, a little bit harder to change than other brands' ejector springs, but we're not too worried about that in the grand scheme of things. It's really, really very nice actually to have them external, but when you take them out, make sure you don't shoot them across a room. You now have big holes in them, so you can use most tools just to recock it, which is quite pleasant. But do not overcock these. You don't have enough connection between that and there if you are going to manually cock it. So if you do it, you really need to be quite careful of just taking it far enough. There we go, just until you hear that click. Obviously a lot easier with a vice, but quite easily to cock it manually by hand. They're actually quite easy to get back in. I mean, although a little bit harder than others, they are quite easy to get back in. At least they have an oversized spring guide. Sorry, I got all tied up with my tongue there. Right, let's pop this back in the fore end. If there's any questions about any of these bits, please just let me know as we go. So, barrels. The barrels now on a 525 are monoblock. They used to be tropolump on some of the older 325s, but they're now monoblock. This means essentially take the ejectors out. What they have is they have a single milled block here, and they sleeve 2 tubes in, probably weld them in, and then lay the ribs. Ribs are available obviously with solid mids or vented mids, or a thin game top, or this standard wide top. I'm a great fan of this. It is available with single bead sight or double, but most of them come with doubles as factory. As you can see, actually looking down this rib, you have those tram lines down the middle. That's probably one of my favourite things about a Browning, is the way these catch the light. Here you can see the outside is gloss and the centre is dark, and that can work the other way around. Either way, it's contrast and it gives you a real nice sight plane and kind of sucks you into the middle of it. That really suits some people and it really doesn't suit others. I shoot maintained lead, and I find actually looking at the bead, although you're not supposed to in most people's eyes, I use it as a reference point. I do look at it. And this helps me sort of get in that zone. Anyway, I'm a great fan of that. The monoblock barrels, maybe they're not as good as the tropolump ones were, but they are still absolutely fantastic. These barrels are available with different bores depending on model, and come all the way from about, these are 18.7, so most of them are overboard now looking at it, but say they go all the way from 18.4 to 18.7. I don't even think I've even done at 18.8. Choke-wise, come with 2 different types of key, be aware. Some have thin slots, some have fat slots, and you have Invectors and Invector Pluses, and I think they even do Invector DS's in some of the high-end 525s now. Do these make much of a difference? Probably not. They also do a fixed choke model in the 525, which is more than delightful if you can find the right one, as they only do fixed chokes in slightly older 525s in a Sporter. There's your Invector Plus choke. A great choke, plenty of aftermarket ones to go with them, so I don't have a lot more to say about the chokes. Again, they have an awful lot of options there. The Browning choke key that they come with is quite nice. In fact, probably one of the nicest things around the gun's accessories, again, is they do give you plenty, is you have a choke key that you can have set either way like that. You've got a nice tight guide that locks into the barrel, and they are a brilliant key. I've only had a couple of these fall apart, but they can be taken apart. There's a little screw inside there you can do to take that apart. Apart from that, there's not a lot to say for the barrels. There's a lot of different lengths available, a lot of different borings and back borings and length enforcing cones, that sort of thing on different models, but that's rather fantastic. Alright, and that's pretty much all I have to say about the technical aspect. The problem being is there is so many variants, it's where do you start, like with any of these things. All the way, if you think from the 525 grade 1 game, or game 1 for 1300 quid, all the way up to stuff like the Ultra XS and the high-end sporting 525 models. They are all fantastic. So that was it. That was the in-depth discussion of a 525, a review if you like. Balance depends very much on models, however they can be balanced out very nicely. Over other guns, let's play, this one's really very pleasant. It's that's what, a 28-inch Sporter, is it? Yeah, 28-inch Sporter. Over other models, they have a really nice big grip, and that sort of deep action that allows for those locking lugs to go in the bottom does provide that depth runs all the way through the gun. So you end up with a much deeper gun than some of its counterparts in terms of feel. That doesn't necessarily mean they're fat as well, it's just a slightly different dimension, and something that for me makes a Browning, and I'm a great fan of that. Ooh, there you go, I was talking about that tight top bite. There you go, this one hasn't had a lot of work. Again, just be aware of issues, potential issues, of which there are very few, is these guys are more expensive than other brands, namely Beretta, to get refurbed or rebuilt. So certainly worth, if you're buying one, making sure that it isn't too shot out. And that's about it. To do that, it's real simple, just take your fore end off, just give her a little shake, and you'll see if she's nice and tight on the face. Have a look at the top lever, and as you can see here, this one is nicely over. They will work over with age as that bite goes in. There's a few little things you can do to rectify this. I've seen a lot of these guys with peened bites, that's bad. They do oversized bites, you can get your bite re-welded, the bit that's actually going in the bottom to lock the barrel in place, you can have your loop welded up, you can have your cross pin redone, you can have it properly rejointed. Alternatively, you can just put a new top lever spring on, and actually sometimes just that extra thing. I remember a long time ago somebody had one of these and they were pulling through. Every time they pulled the trigger it was so loose the gun would open after the second shot just from the recoil of it. Not great, I know, but again, the beauty and the simplicity of the design is unfortunately such that they are slightly more expensive to maintain in the long run than some of their competitors. However, the number one thing about this gun that is my favourite thing with all Browning designs is this noise. They make the best gun closing clunk of any gun out there. The trigger pulls, although spongy, are fantastic, and I'm a fanboy. That clearly means they're the best, obviously. Anyway, that's all from us. Thanks for watching. See you next time.